Time for the business news now. Stephen Carroll is with us this morning. Hello to you, Stephen.
Hi, hello.
You're starting off with the markets, which have reacted to that nuclear test from North Korea.
The South Korean markets are the worst performers in Asia today after the news of that fifth test. The Kospi index in Seoul down 1.25% a short time ago. The finance minister saying they'll be monitoring the markets closely for volatility in the next 24 hours. We had seen some effect on the Japanese markets as well, dropping into the red after the first reports emerged, but they have recovered somewhat. The Nikkei closing up just ever so slightly. On the European markets, we're seeing shares opening down. London, Paris and Frankfurt all in the red that started trading this Friday. Shares in the Italian bank, Monte dei Paschi di Siena, down around 0.5% after the resignation of its chief executive. That bank in the middle of a major restructuring.
Well, from Europe to the States now, we're going to turn to the American bank Wells Fargo. They've been hit by a record fine.
The US consumer finance watchdog fined the bank $185 million after discovering that staff had opened more than 2 million accounts without the customer's permission. Staff used fake email addresses and even created PIN numbers for customers without telling them in an effort to reach sales targets. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says that 5,300 staff lost their jobs at Wells Fargo over the misconduct since 2011. The $185 million fine is the largest ever handed down by the regulator.
Let's turn to France now. Details of planned income tax cuts are set to be announced later.
We've just got details of them in the past few minutes, in fact. Income taxes have risen by some 35 billion euros since 2012. That figure is set to come down by 1 billion next year, with reductions including of up to 20% for low-income earners. Now, some 5 million households will benefit from these latest measures. The move comes ahead of the presidential election next year, where taxation is sure to be a major issue. A new survey in the financial newspaper Les Echos finding that almost 2/3 of French people say their taxes have increased under President François Hollande. Alison Sargent has more.
François Hollande began his term with a clear message: more taxes for the rich.
There will be 5 billion euros in extra income tax. This will mostly impact the wealthiest 10% of French families.
Over the following few years, the government made changes, including reintroducing a tax on overtime and lowering the threshold for a family tax credit. Take the Dubois family. They have 2 children and a combined monthly income of 3,600 euros. They paid over 700 euros in taxes a year when Hollande entered office, which then shot up to well over 1,000 by 2014. Then there's the Denis family, with an income of 7,300 euros a month. They paid over 5,000 euros at the start of Hollande's term. Their taxes nearly doubled to over 10,000. But in 2014, the French government changed its tune.
The price of daily life is too high. We need to lower taxes.
A reformed tax scale helped cut the amount that lower-income families pay. The taxes paid by the Dubois skyrocketed before falling below 3% of where they started. Meanwhile, for the Denis family, the bill kept on climbing for an increase of 73%. With this latest round of tax cuts, François Hollande will once again be targeting lower and middle-income households.
Well, let's turn next to Airbnb, which said to apologise for the discrimination that some of its users has experienced.
The rental site has come under fire for months now over how some hosts are rejecting renters because of their race, age or gender. A Harvard University study published last year found that customers with names that sounded black were 16% less likely to be accepted for rentals than those with white-sounding names. Now, the company has undertaken a review of its policies afterwards. It's now making changes, including minimising users' photos during the booking process and pushing hosts to allow more instant bookings. Now, in an email that was sent to Airbnb users, Chief Executive Brian Chesky says bias and discrimination have no place on Airbnb and we have zero tolerance for them. Unfortunately, we've been slow to address these problems, and for this, I am sorry.
And finally, Stephen, another twist in the tale of the problems with the latest smartphone. Samsung this time, isn't it?
Yes, American aviation authorities have told passengers not to switch on or charge their Galaxy Note 7 phones while on board planes. That's after the company last week issued a global recall of the model following reports of the battery exploding during or before it's being charged. The Federal Aviation Administration also told passengers not to pack their phones in checked-in bags. Qantas and Virgin Australia have also issued similar warnings for their customers as well.
Ricky, I don't know if you saw that, Steve. We're all cringing slightly. It's a terrifying story, goodness. Well, I'm glad I have one of the very old-fashioned old phones. It's barely even a smartphone. Thanks for that, Stephen Carroll, taking us to the top stories.